What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Enjoying the Review. I'm your host, the incomparable Zach Jones, and today I will be starting a brand new series. That's right, today I'm going to be reviewing and recapping The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 1, entitled Future Days. Before I get into things, I want to remind everybody that if you will, please hit that subscribe button, leave a thumbs up, comment, positive reviews, all that good stuff. You can also listen in audio form on your podcast catcher of choice. And if you like, you can follow me on social media on Twitter at Zach Jones Live, ZachJonesLive, or on Blue Sky at Enjoying the Review. All right, guys, let's get into it. So, a little background on me. I have played both The Last of Us and The Last of Us 2 video games. And while I don't heap as much effusive praise on them as a lot of people do, they are very good games. And if you're someone who plays games and if you have not played them, I would highly recommend it. The only thing is, I don't know if I'd recommend playing them before watching the show. And I think that's going to get into my biggest critique of the series. Well, let me get this off the bat. I do like the show. I enjoyed season 1, and I enjoyed this episode. In fact, I'm going to give this episode a 7.3 out of 10. I think it was solid. My thing is, I think this show is almost a little too faithful to the source material. And for me, I feel a lack of discovery. Since it does adhere so closely to the video games. I mean, for those of you that haven't played the games, there are a lot of scenes that are taken directly from the video game, like basically shot for shot remakes. Like they look the same, the camera moves in the same way. To the point where it's like, if you played the games, like so much of this is roadmap for you. Like it's not just where point A is and point Z is. You know a lot of the beats along the way, and yeah, it does veer at different times. And I find myself kind of enjoying those parts the most. In fact, season 1, of course, had the Nick Offerman episode that really, was not shown in the video games at all, which was refreshing. And I'm hoping this season has an episode like that as well. And again, it's not that the stuff that adheres more closely to the video games is bad. It's just that it's so close. I get it. I'm like, I kind of been there, done that. And like I said, I'm lacking that sense of discovery. But I do think that if I hadn't played the games before seeing the show, I would be much more into this show. But because I kind of know the outline, it gets a little slow for me. And listen, this is a challenge anytime you adapt a piece of material, because if you go too far off the beaten path, then you're kind of alienating the fans that made the property something to begin with. But I think if you adhere too closely, you risk boring the audience. And while I wouldn't say I'm bored. There are times where I just feel like, I'm just kind of reliving a cutscene in a video game that I've seen before, and so I don't know what the right answer for them is. I would just like to see them, I guess, veer a little more out, especially like, for example, like there's a scene in this episode where Ellie and Dina, they find this market, and they go into it, and of course they find some infected in there, and the same scenario was in The Last of Us 2 video game. So I was like, okay, maybe they could just maybe it's not a market, maybe it's a completely different type of building. It's just something to differentiate it. I don't know. But even like the city in Jackson, Wyoming, like now I forget when I played The Last of Us 2. I didn't play it right when it came out. It was either last year or the year before, so it's still like semi-fresh in my mind. But that town is, I think, a pretty faithful, like direct, you know, recreation of what's in the video game. And a part of me is like, that's impressive from a detail point of view, I guess. But I don't know. Maybe it would be better if it did have a different visual identity from the game, just for people like me who have played it to, so it seems a little fresher. I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, it's always tricky. I know that when you adapt stuff, but I do think this show is maybe just a little too sticking to the path of the video game. But mostly part, you know, as far as the directing, the acting, I think it's all very solid. I have heard a few people online saying that they don't really jive with Bella Ramsey as Ellie, and think they would have rather had someone else cast. I don't know. I think Bella Ramsey does a really good job. If I had one criticism, especially in this episode, I think she is written a little annoying at times, where they're really trying to play up where she's like, trying to be tough. And a part of that, I was like, I don't know if I buy that someone in her shoes at her age would be acting like this, even though she has been put through the ringer, through what happened in season 1. And then I also know some people did not like the casting of what's her name? I think it's Kaitlyn Devers for the role of Abby, because in the video game, of course, Abby is very buff, and Kaitlyn is a smaller actress, and she didn't like kind of be buff up for the role. I think it's fine. I err on the side of the good acting whenever it comes to that sort of thing, and I think she's a good actress, so I'm fine with it. Although it did give that character in the video game, a distinct visual identity. So, maybe it would have been cool if she bulked up a little bit for the role, but I'm not too offended by it. Like I was just saying, like nothing. It's kind of refreshing when things aren't exactly like they were in the video game. So, overall, I'm cool with her casting. But Pedro Pascal, great acting. They added Catherine O'Hara to the cast, and I really like their scene in this episode, because again, this is a scene interaction that was not in the video game. So at least here, I had a little bit of that sense of discovery, which was good. But most of the other parts of this episode were things I've seen before, from the game. So I guess going forward, I just hope I hope we get more like Nick Offerman type stuff that we got in season 1, where it's like, oh, this is something completely new, new characters I didn't know about, new scenario I didn't know about, and I just, I want to feel surprised when I watch, the episode. So yeah, those are my big takeaways. So with that out of the way, guys, let's get into the details and the nitty gritty of the episode. So we start out where they basically give us the end of season 1 again. This is where, Ellie says, swear to me what you're telling me is true. Joel told her, hey, the hospital ended up being a sham. They quit looking for a cure. Or they couldn't make a cure. Of course, he's lying. He did not want to sacrifice Ellie. And he says, he swears it. I will say, some people have the take, and I think it's a bad take. I know famously, like Greg Miller from Kind of Funny has this take that Joel's actions at the end of The Last of Us, the first Last of Us game, make him a villain. the fact that he, quote unquote, selfishly saved Ellie, but doomed the world from getting a cure. And I think that's a silly take to me, because imagine in the video game if it actually gave you the option. All right, do you want to sacrifice Ellie for a chance, not a sure thing, but a chance at a cure? Or do you want to save this little girl who, first of all, saved your life, but also is like a surrogate daughter to you? Kind of, not replacing, but like after Joel lost his biological daughter. And my thing is, I think he would come off as much more of a villain if he did not save her. Now, you can argue that, okay, he should have saved her, but then he should have told her the truth so that she had the option to go back if she wanted to. But again, even that, I don't know. I think Joel does. I mean, in the games, like, to play the games, you're going to be a serial killer. So in that way, he is kind of a villain. I just don't think the actions at the end of the first game make him a villain. I would argue that doing the opposite may, in fact, in a way, I mean, it's a shades of gray thing for sure. Now, if even if it was like for sure the cure is going to work, if we sacrifice her, I don't think the staff there was just going to let him wait for her to wake back up so he could check with her to make sure. And it would have been villainous to just sacrifice her without her getting the choice. So again, I don't deem his actions at the end of The Last of Us video game or season 1 of the show to be villainous. Okay, so we cut to Abby. We're introduced to Abby. She's watching the giraffes that were introduced in season 1. And we see there are several graves of dead fireflies. Of course, Joel killed all these men. Members of Abby's group heard the rumor that Ellie survived an attack from the infected. I know we're not supposed to call them zombies. Let's be honest, they're zombies. Most members of the group want to move on, but Abby is obsessed with finding Joel. And one of the big themes of The Last of Us is that violence begets more violence, and also, I think of how violence can almost become a disease. If you've ever watched the movie Old Boy, it has a similar theme to it. How a thirst for revenge can basically become a sickness. So one of the men from Abby's group suggests that first, because they know that there's like a guy in Seattle, or they hear that they can go to, and he can hook them up with resources. So he's like, well, let's go to the guy in Seattle and get the resources. And then he promises Abby they will then find and kill Joel, because she's obsessed with it. Abby looks at what is, I don't think they say it here, but it's her father's grave. I guess they could technically change it, but I watched the little featurette they had after the credits, and she mentions that it's the father, so they're following that. So she looks at her father's grave, and she says when they find Joel, she wants to not only kill him, but kill him slowly. So now we cut to 5 years later. We need the old SpongeBob narrator. 5 years later. And Ellie is practicing fighting with a large man. They're doing like UFC stuff where like he punches her and then she gets like this lock around his head and he taps out. I thought this was a little bit silly, and I don't know if I really bought it, but okay. We see she now has the tattoo on her arm that she also has in the game that kind of covers her original bite on the arm. Um, we're introduced to an Asian man named Jesse. He was also in the Last of Us 2 video game. And he tells Ellie that he had the man she's sparring with to pull punches so he wouldn't have to explain, why she got knocked out to Joel. And she tells him never pull punches again. And again, this is kind of what I was referring to, where I think she's written a little over the top and a little bit annoying here. I don't really like them trying to make her sound, so tough. Comes off as a little silly. But then again, I don't know. She is, a 19-year-old girl, so maybe it fits in. So now we see the town in Jackson, Wyoming, and like I said, again, I didn't freshly look at this scene from the video game, but like from my memory, I think it's pretty spot on. Even how the camera kind of moves and shows the street and everything. Okay, this was something new that wasn't in the game. So outside, there's a large broken pipe, and inside it's filled with roots, which isn't interesting on its own. But towards the end of the episode, when they revisit that pipe, we see there is something a little interesting there that wasn't in the video game. So that might be cool. Inside a house, Joel is fixing some power breakers. Dina comes into the room, and she asks Joel to teach her how to repair the breakers. And while she's there, she asks Joel why Ellie is mad at him. He says that she is 19 now, and he's basically her father, and no kid likes their parent at that age. And he's like, I know, I'm overprotective, and I'm a bit of a hard ass, but he doesn't really know why she's so upset at him. He says he can't hold himself responsible for another person's emotional state. And because he used that phrase, Dina puts it together that he must be getting therapy from this woman in town named Gail. And he tries to deny it at first. He's like, no, I'm not in therapy. Jeez. So he tells her, she tells him about the pipe with the roots in it. And he's like, well, go pull the roots out. And then we'll have to like repair the pipe with something or other. Before she leaves, he tells her to swear she won't tell anybody that he's in therapy. So now we move over to yet another scene that was in the video game where Tommy is having Ellie practice using a sniper rifle, and she's taken down. She shoots I think a clicker first, and then another infected guy. She's aiming for his head, but shoots off his foot or something. Ellie is upset because Tommy is taking her off of patrol duty and putting her on gate watch, which is safe but very boring for her. He tells her he is doing it because Joel is concerned about her, and she mentions how she got bit, and didn't turn. And Tommy tells her, hey, quiet. We don't talk about that. She's supposed to be keeping that a secret. So, of course, she, yells it into the air that she got bit, just to be rebellious. But nobody else was around to hear it. So she insists, she basically says, well, I'm stubborn like Joel, so I'm not going to give up on this. So she basically insists on going on patrol. And so Tommy, finally gives in. Now we move over to the town, to Joel again. He is in a discussion with a city councilwoman, I guess. They made their own kind of government here, and they have a council women and council men. She complains that things aren't getting built fast enough because Joel is like the head of construction in this town. He says they don't have the resources to keep up with the new people that have been showing up in the town. She asks him if they should just leave them outside, and he says, yeah, maybe we should. He's like, if you can't get your own life raft steady, you don't take on new people, He said he'd like to take everyone in, but he can't. They just don't have the resources. Um, and he says if you can't look after your own, you're no good to anyone. So now we're all introduced to Joel's nephew, Tommy's son. And we also find out that this councilwoman is Tommy's wife. Uh, I forget if they used her name here. I don't remember what it was if they did. Um, Tommy mentions he was hunting, and Joel was like alone, and I think he says yeah. So he doesn't want him to know that he was hunting with Ellie. Before he leaves, Tommy's wife reminds Joel that he was a refugee once too. Saying like, you're lucky to be here. We should be taking in the other refugees. So now Joel goes to a therapy session with Gail, played by Catherine O'Hara, and he pays for the session with low-grade marijuana. She mentions that it's all like seeds and stems. Joel says that he tells her that he backed off Ellie, but it didn't seem to help any, and she still treats him like a stranger. He says that Dina treats him with respect, and he likes how Dina treats him, like with a smile and a hello, and he wishes, but he's like, she's not my daughter. And then Gail reminds him that, Ellie's not your daughter either. But Gail tells him that she is just acting like every other 19-year-old girl acts, and kind of chastising him for boring her and harping on this subject every time they have a session. And he's like, aren't you supposed to validate me? And she's like, probably, but I'm not going to anymore. Gail says she can tell. She's had enough sessions to tell that Joel is leaving something out. He's not telling her the full truth. Joel can tell Gail has been drinking. Well, he actually brings her some whiskey, but he can tell that's not like her first one of the day. And so he's like, I'll just come back another day. Before he leaves, she reveals that Joel shot and killed her husband, Eugene. She says she resents him and hates him for it. She says that she knows he had no choice and she should forgive him, but she tried and she can't. Now, I'll be honest, I don't remember what the deal was with Eugene in season 1. I'm guessing he must have got bit, got infected, and Joel put him down. I can't remember. Correct me in the comments if it was something else. I just assume from context that was probably it. She says looking at him sitting in her home makes her angry. And then she tries to get Joel to admit what he did to Ellie. And with tears in his eyes, he says, I saved her. And then he leaves the room, which I make a levity of it, but it actually was a good, powerful scene. And like I said, for someone who's played the game, I think it's one of the better, are the scenes I like more in this episode because it's not taken from the video game. And it's like, again, okay, something new, and I enjoyed it. At Ellie's place, she listens to cassette tapes while she cleans her gun. And Dina shows up to take her on patrol with her. Dina helps Ellie zip up her coat, and we can already sense here that there's some sexual tension between these two. Dina invites Ellie to watch some movies with her and Joel, but Ellie doesn't seem interested. We can tell that for whatever reason, she does not want to hang out with Joel right now. So, Ellie and Dina get saddled up on their horses and they go to the front gate where Jesse gives the patrol instructions. This is just supposed to be a simple recon mission. If they see any trouble, they're supposed to come back and get a larger group to go with them. And Jesse is putting a woman named Kat in charge of this recon team. So they're supposed to take orders from her. So while they're on horseback, Dina asks Ellie if she's taken anyone to, I guess it's a New Year's party tonight. She tells her she should ask Kat since she's the only other lesbian in town. And we also find out that apparently Ellie and Kat had a romantic relationship in the past, but they broke up. Dina says her and Ellie should go to the party. We find out that also Dina was dating Jesse, but they broke up, and they've had like an on again, off again thing several times. So the group finds a trail of blood, and Ellie and Dina continue to investigate it against Kat's wishes. Kat tells them, no, this is where we should turn around and get a larger group. But Dina and Ellie just go on ahead, even though Kat wants to turn back and report it. So they follow the blood trail, and it leads to a bunch of dead infected and a bear. So, like, the implication is, like, the bear and the infected started, fought with each other, and they all ended up dying. So even though in the scene before, Kat said she wanted to turn back, they didn't. She and the other two followed, and they show up here. And there's like this store, this marketplace. So Ellie and Dina insist on investigating the market to see if anyone is in there. Ellie distracts an infected with a beer bottle, again, right out of the game, and then stabs it to death in the head. But then, I don't know if this exact thing happens in the game, but it happens in a lot of Naughty Dog games, including, I'm sure, parts of The Last of Us. She falls through the floor. So this was a good tense scene where first she's like reading a magazine, and then we see it. I think an animal of some kind goes in the background, and then she hears a noise. She goes to investigate it, and in the background we can see there's an infected like crawling on the floor. Eventually, she sees that infected, and she yells at it, "Hey, come and run at me!" But instead, and this is unusual, it runs off and hides. So she goes to look for it, and like it waits for her, it hides and waits for her and stalks her. And, it gets to jump on her, and it's able to bite her in the stomach before she's able to shoot and kill it. And I believe they end up referring to like this kind of infected as a stalker, which I remember in The Last of Us 2, like there are infected that won't show up on your little like listening radar. And I assume like that's what we're getting here. It's been long enough since I played the game. I can't really remember like what they called those, but I'm thinking that must be it. And so Dina comes in after the fact, and she makes sure to zip up her coat or whatever, hide her wound so Dina doesn't see it. So now we cut to Ellie telling the town council what happened, and this council is led by Tommy and his wife. And Dina lies and says like, "Oh, yep, I saw the whole thing, and that's what happened." Tommy's wife can tell that Dina is lying, but she believes Ellie's story is true. And Ellie just describes to him how like it seemed to be a smarter infected and how it like hid and waited for her. Ellie cuts over like her bite wound and then stitches it up. I'm guessing the cutting is to. Well, I don't know if that is to like make it easier to stitch, or just to also maybe disguise it as it could be another type of wound. I don't know. We see her writing in a journal, and she writes a couple times over, "Don't F it up." I assume she's referring to like um, a potential relationship with Dina. Um, Although then later on, when they're at the dance, she seems kind of surprised that Dina's into her. So I don't know. Joel visits Ellie to see if she's going to the party, and then he sees her guitar and offers to restring it for her. So Ellie goes to the party, and Dina is dancing with a bunch of guys. Um, Jesse comes over and she's like, "I bet you guys will be back together soon." And he's like, "No, we won't." Um, and so then Dina and Ellie start dancing, and you know where this is going. One thing leads to another, and sure enough, they end up kissing right there and then. Big old lesbian kiss right in the middle of the church, right in the middle of the townspeople. And so, wouldn't you know it, some guy named Seth interrupts, and he tells them that, "Dagnabbit, this is a family event. You shouldn't be uh, kissing like that." Um, I suppose even in the I don't even in the apocalypse, I suppose there's still got to be people like that, right? But he ends up referring to them as, and then Joel pushes him down to the ground and tells him to get out of there. Uh, this angers Ellie. She yells at Joel for getting involved, tells her that she does not need his help. And so he, you know, he's like, I messed up again. And he leaves. As Ellie is walking home, she sees Joel playing the guitar on his porch, but she ends up just ignoring him, walking right past him. So I guess this is like New Year's. People are celebrating. Someone has a sparkler, and someone drops a lit sparkler next to the broken pipe from earlier with the roots in it, and it looks like this. These roots have the same like kind of cordyceps tendrils coming out of it, um, that were that come out of the infected when they try to infect another person. So part of me is like, does this root system like go down to like a very large like bloater type of thing, or is these just like the cordyceps spores growing through this thing? I'm not sure exactly, but it was an interesting development. And again, I don't believe that was in the game, so I'm not sure. And then to cap this episode off, also taken from the game, is Abby's group in the distance discover the city. Abby knows, or at least thinks she knows, where Joel is. So yeah, like I said, a very solid episode. It's just as I was going through there, you could tell how many times I was like, this is from the game. This is from the game. Follows the game very, very faithfully. Maybe a little too faithfully would be my one big criticism of the show. But look, overall, it's still very well directed, very well acted. I would still recommend this show to everyone, especially people who have not played the games, because I think if you're someone who have not played the games and you have no idea what's coming, this is going to be just a great show. But if you've played the games, I think this is going to be more like a good show that just hits the beats that you expected it to hit. But guys, let me know in the comments what you think. Maybe you're somebody who's like, hey, I like how closely this adheres to the game. It's more faithful that way. I'm sure there's people like that out there, so let me know. But guys, I think that will do it for the episode. So I just want to remind everybody once again that if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Please like the video. Please leave a comment. Please, if you have time, give me a 5-star review. All that good stuff. You can also listen in audio form on your podcast catcher of choice. share clips with people too. Um, and then you can follow me on social media either on Twitter at Zach Jones Live, ZachJonesLive, or on Blue Sky at Enjoying the Review. But until next time, guys, I hope you're enjoying the review. Bye, guys.